Hello everyone. This program will discuss an interesting, yet somewhat heavy topic, the fear under the gaze of death. Generally speaking, no matter what type of fear it is, it always forms a landscape, an image that becomes easily understood once it is visualized. This landscape, once made concrete, brings an image that we are all familiar with. But how familiar is it? So familiar that it has become as natural as a punishment chant in life. It is the ghost. Ghosts, this supernatural, airy, and mysterious entity, are more often seen today as superstitions of the unknown. In fact, they are the most direct manifestation of the fear we just discussed. Ghosts are scary because, from the perspective of the living, they do not belong to humans. But when we think from the perspective of deceased, we realize that the frightening ghosts seem to have human attributes. At least, the superstition of the unknown once was human. One can say that most of the horror media today, whether movies, TV shows, or novels, revolve around the image of ghosts that rely on the fear landscape we just discussed to express their imagery. We don't need much thought to feel or even understand the source of the horror in a cultural product that involves ghosts. So, who exactly built this fear landscape and why was it built? Here's a little story for that. One morning, a young boy was in class. For first grade students, the workload wasn't heavy or intense, so the teacher was quite lenient about the children's daydreaming or distractions. The boy was daydreaming when suddenly the face of a man appeared outside the classroom window. Startling him, he quickly recognized that the man was his father. His father had come to school to deliver some strange news. His grandfather, whom he loved dearly, who was both a mentor and a friend, and whom he respected, had suddenly passed away. At his age, the boy didn't have a clear concept of death. To him, death was neither an end result nor a process of disappearance. Strangely for him, being escorted from the school to the hospital ward, what he could comprehend about death was more like an atmosphere. In the hospital's bed, there was clearly a person lying, but his face could not be seen as it was covered by a white cloth. Someone told the boy that the person beneath the clothes was his grandfather, but the boy didn't think so. He couldn't and wouldn't admit that the strange person lying motionless beneath a white cloth was his grandfather. He felt that everyone around him seemed abnormal, and the oppressive atmosphere lingered on every familiar face he encountered. It felt as though this day was completely different from any other day, as though this world was special compared to any other. Even his usually lively father seemed not quiet himself, though he still smiled at him, yet. When the boy saw his father holding a wet towel, reaching beneath the white cloth to wipe something and muttering, "Dad, look, you are still warm. How could you suddenly leave?" It was all beyond the boy's understanding. The boy thought everyone had gone mad. He didn't understand what was happening. This madness continued until several days later, when standing in the funeral home's memory hall, he finally faced death directly. This death turned everyone's clothing, including his own, to black. It made him so weak that he couldn't even step into memory hall. It made him unable to look into his revered grandfather's eyes. For the first time, he understood what death really meant. He felt an indescribable fear. In this story, the boy experienced a gradual formation of a fear landscape, which we can summarize as a trilogy made up of madness, ritual, and demise. From this, we can immediately understand something. A person's death can be observed as a rational fact by an outsider, but for a person involved, the entire process constructed by death is one of madness, an absolutely irrational process. We can understand it as a process of sorrow, mourning, or remembrance, much like how the father spoke to the deceased while wiping his body. rationally cannot explain why a living person would speak to a dead one, but rituals make this mad act appear reasonable. Of course, this ritualistic process is still part of a madness. Demise is the core of the entire dice process, and the greatest reason the boy felt fear. Because rituals show him that this mad would mean he had to say goodbye to someone forever. Rationally was this eroded by madness, reminding him in an unrealistic place that he must say goodbye to someone who had already passed away in a specific setting, which meant the person was still there. Fear landscapes are born in the repeated experiences of death, but this doesn't explain why we, as humans, use rituals to complete these fear landscapes. There is a popular explanation that it's because people want to resist death and wish to live forever after death. This is a mad and romantic notion, but it doesn't fully answer our questions. At least rationally doesn't allow humans to place themselves on the cliff of madness. Interestingly, it is precisely because of this that rationality doesn't allow humans to place themselves on the cliff of madness, that rationality has made a compromise with madness. Thus, almost every field of study, whether sociology, philosophy, literature, psychology, or art, continually explores the relationship between death, fear, and rituals. Reflection and retrospections push humans to explore the boundaries of the irrational, and on the other side of this boundary, only madness exists. Religion was born from this. Belief was also born from this. The story we just discussed is just one of the most direct manifestations of death. In reality world, the fear death brings and the landscape project from the fear is almost omnipresent. Death gazes at us all the time. Every second of our existence, death is slowly taking away our life. In other words, each of us is continually experiencing the final phase of the death trilogy from the boy's story. Only this seemingly rational, ordinary life has numbed our ability to perceive death's presence. Yet, at certain moments, some unique sensations will connect us to a fleeting glimpse of death, making us either awaken or fall into madness. We feel fear, we feel confusion, we feel death's gaze. Whether or not we believe in ghosts, whether or not we believe in spirits, we all inherently understand the meaning of ghosts and have felt the fear they bring. Because from the moment we were born, the vast fear landscape of death has already hovered over our dreams, becoming the lifelong companion of our existence. Well, that's all for today's program. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye.